has been reported to me that Dr. Petrie is making repeated efforts to probe the subconscious mind of the girl Betty Leonard. We have no longer any need for her. Inform Loda she is to be destroyed.
Hey gang, Uncle Todd and Sonny here, and we're taking a bit of a detour in our look at horrific espionage with a short-lived syndicated TV show, The Adventures of Fu Manchu, or Dr. Fu Manchu. It was a character created by Sax Rohmer, who Fu Manchu was like a master criminal. Originally he worked for a specific Chinese gang and was also very loyal to the country of China. And it fit into what was called the Yellow Peril style of fiction, in which people from China were considered villains, always doing something to bring down either England or America, usually one or the other. And of course, this was countered by Earl Bigger's Charlie Chan character in the 20s, when he was first created, who was a Chinese detective who brought criminals to justice. But the first book was around 1912, I think, making him about as old a character as Tarzan and just as problematic to today's audiences. The books themselves are full of rampant anti-Asian bigotry. I mean, it's amazing what you find when you read older books. Just the insane beliefs that people just spouted off casually. Of course, being a popular series, it got made into films, and as per the time, although henchmen and others may be played by Asian actors, the main lead villain was usually played by a Caucasian actor in makeup. Some of the more famous ones would include Warner Olin, who then became the definitive Charlie Chan in film. He was a Swedish actor who ironically had Asiatic features, especially around his eyes and such, and so he didn't actually require a lot of makeup, unlike our two other main Fu Manchu portrayers, Boris Karloff in The Mask of Fu Manchu, and Christopher Lee, who did a series of Fu Manchu films in the 60s, set during the 1930s time period. And then we get to this TV show. Well, no, actually, I should back up a little bit. In 1940, Republic Pictures, who were a Western and serial producing company, that was their main bread and butter. They would do other types of films, but their main moneymakers were the B-Westerns and their cliffhanger serials, and they adapted Drums of Fu Manchu into a serial, considered by many serial buffs to be, if not the best, one of the best serials ever made. Ironically, the plot of it is not the plot of the book, but is a reworking of the plot of Mask of Fu Manchu, the Boris Karloff movie, in which the villain is trying to find an artifact of Genghis Khan so he can gather all the warring tribes in Asia to be under him to conquer the world. You know, standard stuff. And of course, during World War II, Fu Manchu fell out of favor because, well, the Chinese were an ally against the Japanese. And the books actually had been starting to shift away from Fu Manchu as a Chinese villain and more of a anti-hero, as in the plot of Drums of Fu Manchu was him orchestrating a series of assassinations in an attempt to prevent the coming war, which of course did not work. Then post-war, his character became a character who used all his. He was no longer in the Chinese gang, and he was no longer loyal to China because he'd been ousted from the gang and was now leading a war against communism. Again, anti-hero because he wasn't working with the Allies; he was working on his own. But with the anti-Fu beliefs coming out, because it was a bit of an insulting characterization, Romare created Sumaru, who was supposed to be his new main villain, and she was not of a identifiable ethnic origin, and made a couple films with her too. But the TV show was in 1956, and Republic, going off, I believe, the contract they had for Drums of Fu Manchu, put this show into production, but then Sax Romare got them into a legal dispute over the rights of the character, and thus the show only lasted 13 episodes. Whether that was good or bad, I leave for you to judge. We're going to look at the opening episode, and it had an interesting motif where the opening and closing of the episode was always the same.
And white, life and death, good and evil, two sides of a chess game, two forces in the universe, one magnificent, the other sinister.
Yeah, they would always open with making chess moves, and then they would close with the aftermath of the chess game or whatever. We'll get to that towards the end. The actor playing Fu Manchu is Glenn Gordon, a actor, mainly a small bit player, character actor in TV. He also would make appearances in Mission Impossible, The Waltons, Rawhide, Highway Patrol. Kind of like that. He'd pop up for an episode, and that'd be about it. Or he'd just appear, like in a small bit part, that kind of actor. Now, the person he's playing with is probably his arch nemesis from the books, Sir Nayland Smith. And, of course, Nayland Smith was a knockoff or reworking of Sherlock Holmes, and he was always assisted by his Watson, Dr. Petrie. We then open the episode where we get some background information on what the plot's going to center around.
Professor Yan, please, sir. Professor Yan, would you say a few words to a world audience? I understand, sir, that you bring with you a formula for world peace.
Well, when you're an evil mastermind, you can't be having scientists coming up with world peace formulas. Oh, that interviewer? That is Victorson Young, who got his start as Charlie Chan's number 2 son, Jimmy. He also appeared in Cross Pacific with Humphrey Bogart, and in the serial Trader Tom of China Seas, as well as the horror film She Demons, but is best known today as the cook on the Ponderosa in the long-running series Bonanza. Well, Fu Manchu sets his sights on this doctor, so he has Nurse Betty Leonard kidnapped and places her under a hypnotic spell.
Professor Hugh Yan arrives on Flight 9 from the Orient. He is suffering from a rare disease, and only you will be able to save his life.
Well, seems simple enough. They give Betty a hypodermic and send her on her way. The professor is greeted by Dr. Petrie. He's played by Clark Howard, who he usually played authority figures on TV, like he was a major in The Giant Claw, and he was the sheriff in Billy Jack, in those kind of films. And he probably best remembered as one of the reoccurring captains on the color version of Dragnet in the 60s. Turns out the doctor needs a smallpox inoculation. He hadn't gotten one, so they go to the medical lab where Betty just happens to be administering that.
Professor Yan, I'm glad you're safe.
Betty! What's the idea of the hypo? This was supposed to be a routine vaccination.
Send an ambulance to the lab office and hurry.
Oh no. Whatever she injected him with, he's collapsed. He's gone into a coma. Betty has no memory of why she did this or whatever. The man arriving who called the ambulance is, of course, our hero, Sir Nayland Smith, played by Lester Matthews. He was a prolific character actor, having appeared in Werewolf of London as the romantic, wouldn't say lead, but part of a love triangle in that. He was also in Adventures of Robin Hood, The Three Musketeers, the Ritz Brothers version, and horror films like The Mysterious Doctor and Son of Dr. Jekyll. The woman we left on is Carmane. Caramane. I'm never going to pronounce that correctly. She was a slave of Dr. Fu Manchu in the novels, who fell in love with Sir Nayland's, Dr. Petrie, and would then work against Fu Manchu at times when Dr. Petrie's life would be in danger, and they eventually married and had a daughter, which Dr. Fu Manchu then kidnapped and tried to hypnotize her into marrying him. These books got really melodramatic. Now, I know what you're saying. What about his daughter, Fallow Sway? Well, she doesn't appear in the series. Well, I'll have to check that. She might have appeared in some episodes, but she was not a main part of the series. She actually, in her capacity, fell in love with Sir Nayland Smith, and again, would help her father, but then would work against him if Sir Nayland Smith's life was in danger, but they never got together or married. In one of the books, he actually had her executed, but then she popped up again. He had faked it in a later book. These things got really crazy in the books. Anyways, she goes back to notify Fu Manchu that the entire injection did not get, or I should say the entire dosage did not get injected into Dr. Yan. So he then calls on his assistant loader.
Sir Dennis Nayland Smith has had Professor Yan sent to the receiving hospital. See to it that he does not recover from the effects of the injection he received.
Yes, my lord.
Pretty simple. Later, Sir Nayland and Petrie discover a guard dead and Yan missing. Then Loader is sent to make sure the drug cannot be analyzed, so they can't give an antidote. And see then what happens. Then Fu Manchu, using one of his amazing electronic TV devices, cuts in on the peace conference.
The United States has proposed to share the Rutledge radiation shield with all member nations, provided that they, in exchange, will pool their own country's secret industrial knowledge for the common good.
Well, we can't have that. Why? Machines running everything and producing food so nobody has to starve. Well, how are you going to subjugate people if you got that stuff interfering in it? Well, one of the delegates says he had received a warning that Dr. Yan would be prevented from coming. It's caused quite a consternation among the group, and Sir Nayland comes in to tell them that what has happened to Dr. Yan when the unexpected happens.
No. He was spirited away by agents of Fu Manchu not more than half an hour ago.
Sorry to be late, gentlemen. You see, I was able to make it after all.
I'm shocked.
Wow, that's quite a shock. He doesn't quite look the same. He's partially paralyzed. Right arm, right side of the mouth, almost like a stroke victim. But he's still articulate. He's a little hunched over, too. When they talk about starting an investigation into his abduction, he talks them out of it, saying that they don't want this news of an investigation leaked to the public. They might lose faith in the conference. Well, reluctantly they agree, even over Sir Nayland's protestations. Meanwhile, he suggests to Petrie to try to break through Betty's amnesia with hypnosis. And when Loder reports this to Fu says, maybe she's no longer needed, if you get what I mean. Then, turns out, they did get a sample of the drug, and they are working on an antidote to it. And when Petrie and Sir Nayland step out for a minute, Loder decides that's the perfect time to strike.
Oh, Mr. Loder, Dr. Petrie wants a spectrum analysis of the residue in bottles A and B. Will you get the equipment ready for me, please? Mr. Loder.
After a brief chase around the lab, Petrie manages to break in to handle the situation.
I've had worse.
Really? Have you? Anyway, Loder is, of course, unalive. And let's move over to the press conference where the radiation shield is about to be demonstrated.
The Rutledge radiation shield is, well, it's somewhat like a fast rally in a tennis match. A good player will return the ball no matter to what part of the court it is put. Well, it is merely a question of having the racket in the right place at the right time.
Oh, so it's basically just something better than lead. Okay. Plausible. Well, since it works, time for the evil plan to be instigated.
Atomic motors in cars, airplanes. With this device, even a backward nation could become prosperous and strong.
That is why the United States wants all free nations to have the shield. In the hands of one nation, it could be used for war.
Clever. Everybody's getting gassed, and our professor has a device he's put in his handkerchief to breathe. Fortunately for him, Nayland Smith arrives.
Petrie and I just found the real Professor Yan where Fu Manchu's agents had left him to die. In a storeroom in the basement of the hospital. I'm glad to say that we got there in time.
Talk about luck. But that's not all Sir Nayland Smith is able to surmise.
Understand what possesses Sir Dennis to say what he does. But I'm perfectly willing to remain here until the proper authorities arrive.
By that time, we may all be dead.
Well, looks like the jig is up. Only one thing left to do. Seriously? The ledge. I think we know how this is going to end. Oh, that wasn't good.
Just because something isn't good doesn't mean it's bad.
I don't think the imposter would have agreed with you on that. Anyway, with his plans foiled, Fu Manchu then goes and does what will become a standard ritual at the end of all 13 episodes. And there you have it. The Adventures of Dr. Fu Manchu. Not a big fan of this series. It's a little slow moving. Decent intrigue, but considering this was Republic and the action-packed Commander Cody series they did, this moves like a snail. It's very set-bound with almost claustrophobic in a way, but that's probably more due to the budget. But from Republic, I expected something a little more action-oriented. I mean, it was 1956. You know, TV was advancing at that point from the way it was at the beginning of the decade. And, you know, the Lone Ranger was getting more action in it. And Highway Patrol was another show that really gave you action. The intrigue's fine. Glenn Gordon is not the most menacing of villains, and it could be a personal bias on my part, but his performance is rather stiff. Lester Matthews and Clark Howard, they're both pretty good. Of course, the actor who plays Loader, can you guess what his name is? Keith Richards. Yeah, seriously. He's pretty good. He's doesn't get a lot of screen time, and the fight is a little short. But yeah, even if it hadn't been for the legal issues with the original creator of the characters, it is doubtful this would have been a big hit in the syndication market. I mean, even shows as crazy as Cowboy G-Men only lasted a short time. And that show had Jackie Coogan of Addams Family fame as a gun-toting, bare-knuckle, fisted biting, fighting sidekick. Yeah. And this, no, it's just it kind of moves from here to there, mostly in barren rooms, and it's not fun, you know. Like this kind of thing calls for like a fun adventure that kids can get into, and this just isn't it. Well, there's not really much else to say about this one. Please hit like, share, subscribe, and stay after credits for my favorite scene.
Hypodermic.
Serum.
Cigarette.
Match.
Serum.
Purse.
Injection.
Ampule.
Ampule.
Fu Manchu.